You are listening to the Eastern Conference edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. You can find us every Tuesday right here on Locked On NHL. I'm Ross Levitan on Locked On Senators alongside Mike DiStefano from Locked On Leafs. And we just finished watching Game 4 between the New York Rangers and Tampa Bay Lightning, a series that is now tied up heading back to Madison Square Garden. So we'll hit some stats, news, analysis from that game. But the real shocking news since we last spoke was a 7 p.m. news dump by the Boston Bruins firing head coach Bruce Cassidy. He have a 62% winning percentage as head coach. Unbelievably shocking news. We'll talk about some fallout from that and who has the most attractive vacancies. We're going to play some coaching matchmaker. All that coming up on today's edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. Your team every day.
Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen on this Tuesday, June 7th. You're probably listening to this on June 8th, but we figured why record an hour before puck drop when it's going to age right away? So Mike DiStefano and myself, Ross Levitan, are here to break that game down. But first, Mikey, speaking of recording late, how about dropping the news late? Bruce Cassidy out as head coach of the Bruins. What'd you make of the timing of the announcement and your thoughts on the move in general?
Yeah, 7 p.m. on the dot. This was dropped to the hockey world. So obviously that was a planned decision there. I was shocked, just like you said. I didn't see this coming. There were some interesting comments that were made by Don Sweeney back when they had their original end of season clear out press conferences. But I thought that they had done their internal investigation to see if they wanted to hang on to him, and then a month went by. He was still there. I assumed, okay, they're going to hang on to Bruce Cassidy. Then all of a sudden, 7 p.m. Monday night, Bruce Cassidy relieved of his duties by the Boston Bruins. And I'm just like, whoa, what does this mean? I really think that there could be some implications here. And I mean, realistically, it could go one of two ways. I'm curious to see how you read into the situation.
Yeah, honestly, you're looking at a coach who was Game 7 Stanley Cup Finals in 2019. You're looking at a coach who was a goal away from moving past the Carolina Hurricanes in Game 7 this year. And Don Sweeney admitted as much, general manager of the Bruins, that if they win that series, we're probably not having this conversation right now. That's how close the margins are between being a success and a failure at the National Hockey League level. But I would call his tenure anything but a failure. He took over in the middle of the season in February, I believe, for Claude Julien, who was let go. They always play musical chairs there. I believe anyways, did he go to Montreal then?
Yeah.
Okay. Him and Terry, I feel like have done the rounds of that a couple times, but he came in there. Ottawa ended up beating them in the playoffs that year. But since then, it's been a very high flying team. And you could say that they had the talent. A lot of Bruins fans are blaming management more than the coaching staff for why this team wasn't able to stay as consistently at the top of the standings as they were in 2019 and 2020. Sure, they bring in Taylor Hall, but at the same time, there's trade requests in terms of Jake DeBrusk. David Krejci decides he'd rather play in the Czech Republic than continue his NHL career. So there might be some things bubbling under the surface that maybe fans aren't as privy for. Now, I'm not saying I have a source, but a friend of a friend of a friend type thing says that he may have lost the room.
Yeah, I've seen similar circumstances, and former Bruin, former Maple Leaf, Andrew Raycroft took to Twitter and said, hey, just because a coach is well respected by the fans and by the media doesn't necessarily mean he's a favorite in the room. He unpromptedly tweeted that today. I don't know what that could possibly be about. I'm not going to speculate what it's about, but I think that it's applicable to our situation that we're talking about right now, don't you think? So I don't know. Perhaps you're right. Perhaps he did lose the room, and they decided they needed a fresh voice and someone who could go in there and get something done. When I first saw it happen, though, I kind of looked at it a little bit differently. It seems like the narrative is starting to change, I guess, with like 24 hours later into this whole, he lost the room narrative. But when I first saw the news go down, in my head, I'm thinking, okay, well, we heard last week that McAvoy's going to be out for 6 to 8 months. We heard that Marchand's going to be out for 6 to 8 months. We heard Grzelcyk's going to be out for 6 months. Mike Riley's not going to be there to start the season. Patrice Bergeron is leaning towards retirement, is what's being reported. I had Pete Blackburn on Leafs Lunch the other day. He says he's 70% sure that he believes that Bergeron's going to hang him up. And you encompass all of that together. To me, I thought this firing looked more as, okay, maybe they're going to go in a different direction and they're going to start a bit of a rebuild, take a step back and try and, retool this thing. But then I keep hearing the whole, no, we wanted a different voice in the room and we still want to be competitive. I'm very perplexed by this move because if you want to be competitive, I mean, Bruce Cassidy was a pretty good coach, and regardless if he was liked or hated in the room, I don't know, but there seemed to be a heck of a lot of success there, no?
Yeah, there certainly was, but similar situation. Like I think a lot of people would say that Paul Maurice is a good coach, but at the end of the day, the buttons that you smash so hard, time in and time out, both those guys like demanding coaches, I think you would call them. Sometimes the players just tune them out. Now, again, we aren't privy to the conversations inside the room or even just the relationship between players and coach, but from the outside, it's shocking. Now, there's a lot of vacancies right now in the National Hockey League, and there's a lot of great head coaches. We're going to get in at the end of the show to a power ranking of how attractive each one of these jobs is. But first, I got to ask you, just looking at the list right off the bat, and maybe just for our listeners here, we'll pull it up real quick. So we're going Winnipeg, Detroit, New York, the Islanders, Vegas, Boston, and Philly. Which one of those landing spots would be most ideal if you're Bruce Cassidy, do you think?
Which would be most ideal if I'm Bruce Cassidy?
Yeah, you got to think he wants to go to a winner right off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, probably one of either Vegas or Winnipeg, I would say would be the most sexy pick for an accomplished veteran coach like Bruce Cassidy. A team that is ready to compete, not, a bunch of young kids like Detroit and like, Philly's expected to be rebuilding. So I would say Vegas or Winnipeg would be the most likely landing spot for Bruce Cassidy, in my opinion.
And on 32 Thoughts now, Elliot Friedman, of course, is plugged in as anybody, but he just made the reference that Bruce Cassidy, Ottawa guy, you know any GMs who are Ottawa guys who are looking for a head coach? Maybe a guy with a few Stanley Cup rings?
Who are you suggesting?
Steve Yzerman in Detroit. So I don't know, something to keep an eye on. We know Steve Yzerman and the Red Wings have interviewed Barry Trotz. He's done the rounds. He's pretty much interviewed everywhere at this point. Winnipeg's already been known to have made an offer to have him. So
he's really holding things up here, though.
I know, because that's the first domino that's going to fall. Like that was, to me, that's even more shocking than Bruce Cassidy, because it had been a bit of a consistent underperformance here. And by consistent, I mean 2 years versus 1 year with the Islanders. And the Islanders went through so much. We don't have to get into all of it, but like the new stadium, starting on the road for 20 games, and COVID hit them pretty hard right off the bat. But it was more so they didn't want to lose Lane Lambert to a different team. And he was one of those associate coaches who was ready to take the next step in the eyes of Lou Lamoriello. But right now you're looking at a few pretty good coaches out on the open market. Like, is Rick Bowness retired, or is he still looking like he's going to keep coaching?
Yeah, it sounds like he wants to keep coaching, right? You've got Pete DeBoer, who's a very accomplished head coach, obviously. You've heard Rick Tocchet, potentially, his name getting floated around there.
Boston would just be such a fit for him.
It would be, actually. That Rick Tocchet would be. I hear Lehman's the guy that they're kind of looking at, or Jay Leach. Or Jay Leach.
Nate Lehman's been the U.S. World Junior team for the head coach for the last few seasons.
Yeah. So I hear one of those two is kind of I think I was listening to, one of the programs today, and some insider was spewing out those two names. It may have been my show with Darren Dreger, now that I think about it. So Boston could be or one of those guys. Tortorella's name has come up in a couple of spots. I think he interviewed in Philly. if
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
mean,
mistaken. I thought I read a report about that, which that kind of makes sense. The
yeah, I
Broad
mean,
Street
Talkett in
Bullies,
Philly too. I
they're
mean, he's terrorized people in that building for years
yeah,
back in
exactly.
his
So
playing days.
there's a lot of great coaches out there, lots of great coaches, and 6 vacancies too to try and fill them. Yeah,
And
I think that there's going to be some good coaches that are going to end up in some good spots.
we are exactly 1 month away from the NHL draft as well, July 7th in Montreal. You got to think all these spots are filled by the draft, right? You always see the head coach at the
Yeah.
table with the GM. So we're going to have a bit of a spree here coming up in the next 28 days.
Yeah, I would think so. I would assume Barry Trotz will get sorted out in the next week or so, and then from there, the rest of the dominoes can fall. But I think there's a lot of teams that have interviewed Barry Trotz that think they're still in the running and don't want to make a move unless he decides to pick them. So they're like, okay, we'll hold off, and then once he decides to come back or he decides to which team he's going to go to, then they can start going to their second options and everything will kind of fall into place from there. But now Bruce Cassidy's added into that mix, and he's a great coach himself. So another kind of wrinkle in the whole head coaching vacancies, but also a plethora of terrific, accomplished head coaches out there. Claude Julien's also still out there.
Yes.
Who just won a silver medal with Team Canada at the World Championships.
Wow. Yeah. Another one with great pedigree. Another Ottawa guy I got to mention here is the host of Locked On Senators. Now, before we get to the game that we just watched tonight, or if you're listening to this on Wednesday, last night, we got some great stats, news, analysis coming up. But I just got to ask you point blank, Mikey, if you have carte blanche, are you taking Bruce Cassidy or Barry Trotz?
I'm going Barry Trotz.
Okay.
I think Barry Trotz would be my number one coach on the power rankings. Bruce Cassidy, pretty close second, though.
Yep. All right. Sounds good. Well, as we get ready for some playoff chat, I want to tell you a quick word about our friends at Built Bar, the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. You all know it. You all love it because you all support the Locked On Podcast Network. Now, summer is coming, and depending where you're listening to us, it might already be here, and you're going to have to take your food to go with you. Why not get the perfect snack to take you on a family vacation? All you have to do is throw your Built Bars in your bag, in your kid's backpack when you send them off to camp. Make sure that everyone has one so they're fueled up and ready to go. The best part about Built Bars are they're healthy and delicious. Not only are you having something that tastes like a delicious treat, but you're not sacrificing your diet for it. All Built Bars and Built Puffs are 100% covered in real chocolate. My dog Alfie absolutely loves Built Bars. If you can hear him yapping in the background, he wants me to tell you to try the banana cream pie. He likes the churro flavors as well, and you can too. So go to built.com and get all your favorites. Banana cream pie, as I mentioned, you got raspberry, double chocolate, and so many more. They're all delicious, and new flavors are coming out all the time. So check them out at built.com. And because you're a loyal listener of the Locked On NHL podcast, when you go to built.com, use our promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off your next order. Bingo, bango, bongo, just like that. 15% off with promo code LOCKED15. That's promo code LOCKED15 at built.com. You are listening to the Locked On NHL podcast. I'm Ross Levitan. You can find my work at Locked On Senators 5 days a week. And I'm alongside Mike DiStefano, who we got to give some stick taps to. Both Mike DiStefano and his boy David Morisuti for hitting 1,000 subscribers over at Locked On Leafs. You didn't even have to get out of the first round for that. So congratulations, buddy. That's awesome.
Thanks, pal. Yeah. We were hoping to get there a little bit soon. We were hoping the Leafs would still be in the playoffs by the time we got there.
Yeah, me too.
Slowly but surely. Yeah, I'm sure you were. But slowly but surely, yeah, we ended up getting to 1,000 when I woke up this Tuesday morning. So, yeah, we're excited. And if you haven't, definitely go sub up to Locked On Leafs and also Locked On Sens.
Oh, yeah.
And every Locked On show that you could possibly go. But, we're me and Dave doing some good stuff, I think. I don't know. So the Athletic puts out a survey for the Leafs every year. Do they do the same thing for the Senators?
Yeah, Ian Mendez. We actually had him on the show right after it wrapped up. There's some interesting answers there about, and what's cool is the year over year, because it's like what they thought last year and how did this season affect the outcome. It was really cool.
Well, it's like a the fan survey I'm talking about. They do the fan survey. Okay, so they just got sent out for the Leafs, which I guess
Yeah,
So
fair enough, because they played a couple extra weeks.
right, so that would make some sense here. So they just got sent out to the fans, and so we're going to go through that. Gives us a chance to really put a bow on the season, and see how we feel about things going forward. Got a bunch of draft content that we're about to really start to get into, and off season, it's silly season, so trade
Oh,
proposals up the wazoo.
speculation season, buddy. Oh, yeah. We're already well into the profiles at Locked On Senators. And what we've been doing is we've been cutting down each profile individually and putting that in a thread so that on draft night, people want the quick hitters, the 6-7 minute content videos. So you can check those out at Locked On Senators. We also want to give stick taps to Locked On Canadiens and Locked On Avalanche, both hitting 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you're listening to this, just understand that the Locked On Podcast Network is growing rapidly, and you are a part of something great, and we appreciate you for that very much. Locked On Lightning's buzzing. Locked On Lightning is buzzing. Locked On New York Rangers is buzzing because it's home cooking. Now, get this stat, I almost said Pillsy. We're talking about Locked On Senators, and we're talking about Locked On Leafs so much. You're going to be calling me David here soon. But what I was going to say here, Mikey, is when you go to NHL PR, how about this for a stat? Now, the home team has won all 4 games so far in this conference final. The last time an Eastern Conference final had the home team winning the first 4 games, you have to go all the way back to 1991 when the Boston Bruins and Pittsburgh Penguins both accomplished that. We know Pittsburgh ended up winning that series and the Stanley Cup that season, but this is going to go down to the wire. And if I'm the New York Rangers, which I feel like I'm so invested in it that I kind of am, thanks to our friends at Bet Online.
Yeah, I was gonna say you are invested in it quite literally here, Rob.
I'm probably a bigger part of the team than Alexander Georgiev.
yeah, I would say so.
But no, in all seriousness, this has been a fantastic hockey series. However, despite how close the score ended up being 3-1, now I know Tampa, they give up the goal late. The shutout's over for Vasilevsky with 3.5 minutes left on a shorthanded opportunity for them. I should say power play.
The empty netter.
Oh, they did. Sorry. So, yes, 4-1. And Andre Palat, man, that guy's going to get paid this offseason as an unrestricted free agent. But you got to think how strong the magnetic force is for him to go back where he's won 2 and potentially 3 cups and maybe take a bit of a T-Bay discount and have that tax relief as the tiebreaker there down in a state-free tax zone in Florida. But this game, although it was like tightly contested, it was never in doubt that Tampa was going to come out with this one.
Yeah, I mean, like this is what Tampa does. They go out and they score in the first couple of minutes of the game, and once Tampa gets a lead, it's so hard to come back on them because they just absolutely shut it down. They clog you up in the neutral zone. They don't allow you to do anything. They really get back on defense. They stay on top of pucks. They don't give up many opportunities. And then when you do have the puck in the offensive zone, they just collapse in front of the goaltender and they sit there and block every single shot you throw at them. Like I think the Rangers ended up with something like 54 shot attempts, but only ended up getting through like 30 or so shots on goal. Honestly, the Tampa Bay Lightning, I think the first couple of games, they were rusty coming off of the 4-game sweep, hadn't played in, I think it was like 9 days in between them playing game 4 and the Rangers finally finishing up game 7, getting ready to go for game 1 of the East final. Like they hadn't played in a while, and the rest versus rust debate was real. They finally kicked off the rust probably about midway through, I would say about game 3. They kicked off that rust in game 3. They got the win when they got to Tampa Bay. And then tonight, again, right from the get-go, you felt like they just had a stranglehold on that game. They kept it pretty low-key. They didn't allow New York to really take advantage or get many good opportunities. And that's just how Tampa Bay wants to win a lot of games. They can be a high-scoring, high-flying team if they want to be, but they're always at their best when they're just playing low scoring, low tempo, low event hockey, and they can grind out these 2-0, 2-1s, 3-1, tonight 4-1 victories. It's just what they're the best at.
What do you think was the difference in this game?
I think their depth showed up massively. I mean, Pat Maroon came out and he was a lot better than Ryan Reeves' line. So you had them coming out and doing it, but Vasilevsky also just had some really big stops. But ultimately, I think the biggest difference between those two is Tampa just looks hungrier. Like they were getting to the loose pucks. They were winning those battles along the boards. They just seem like a hungrier team tonight to me.
Yeah, 100%. And it didn't help that a guy who's really burst on the scene, Philip Hedl, left this game, did not return, only ended
Yeah.
up playing 7 minutes and 18 seconds. We hope for the entertainment value of this series for fans. You hope that Philip Hedl's back sooner rather than later. He's been awesome. Didn't he have 5 goals all year and he's got 6 in the postseason? I know that he's beat his regular season total. And I think even more unbelievable than that is this season, playoffs and in regular season, the Tampa Bay Lightning are 8-1 when Pat Maroon scores a goal. So this guy, he's just that glue that keeps this whole ship together. Tonight was his 137th playoff game. Mikey, he's got 49 points, 23 goals, and 3 straight Stanley Cups. So this is just an impressive team. And it's a different guy every night. Like, I didn't even think Vasilevsky needed to be that great tonight. I thought that him and Shesterkin went save for save. I thought they were both solid. Not the reason they lost, unlike, that team up in Alberta. But other than that, man, like the difference, I think depth is a pretty fair one. And then you look at it, and both of New York's power plays came in the last 10 minutes of the game when it was already a multi-goal deficit, whereas Tampa had their opportunities on the power play earlier. Not that they converted. Ironically enough, the only power play goal in this game was a Rangers goal late in the game, and Artemi Panarin scored it. But just the momentum that it gave them. And I was chatting with my buddy on the phone during a pretty spirited bout. Frank Vatrano, his first career NHL fight, going up against Brandon Hagel. Vatrano started strong, maybe a guy who doesn't have that experience, and then Hagel held on and then threw a few haymakers at the end. They had a great exchange in the box that was caught on the Canadian broadcast. But right after that, it was 1-0 at the time for Tampa, and my buddy goes, hammer the Rangers. That's the momentum shift they need. I got them at 250 at Bet Online. You know what happened? 10 seconds later, Kucherov breakaway. Thanks for coming out. The odds go to plus 800. So thanks for that, Wes.
Yeah, that's a bad call. It's a bad friend. That's a bad friend.
Yeah, honestly, he owes me dinner. I'll tell you that much.
There you go. Ultimately, like you just look at tonight's game too, and I felt like this was a must win on both sides. And whoever was going to win tonight's game, like this was a pivotal game in that series. If New York wins it, they're going back home with a chance to advance to the Cup final with a Game 5 win. They lose. All of a sudden, now you're going back home. You're tied at 2 games. You kind of got your tail between your legs, and you've got the defending back-to-back champions with all the momentum now coming back to New York. And then if they get a victory in Game 3, you got to go back to Amalie Arena for Game 6, and it's like, oh gosh, and like you just got Vasilevsky playing outstanding hockey. Like you say, didn't have to be amazing today. It's not like he had to go out there and make, these grade A saves, but he faced six high danger chances. That's it. So defensively, I mean, the Tampa Bay Lightning did their thing. They only gave up 18 scoring chances the entire game as well, compared to the 28 that the Lightning got. So, yes, ultimately, I felt like this thing shifted in the last game anyways when Tampa cut the lead into 2-1 to take that win. And tonight, I feel like they kind of probably wrapped up this series. I'd be surprised if the Rangers go through at this point. I think that it's time for Tampa to roll into their 3rd straight Stanley Cup final. That sucks for you and I, who's got some investment in the Rangers going forward. I had them at plus 800 to make it out of the East. Not even to win the Cup. Just got to make it out of the East. That's plus 800 payday. But I don't see it happening at this point. I think all the momentum's with Tampa, and that team just knows how to win. They know how to get it done at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, it's their 6th straight home win, dating back to Game 4 of Round 1. You might remember your Toronto Maple Leafs put a spanking on them in Game 3 down in Amalie Arena, didn't they? Wasn't it like 5 or 6-1?
No, it was. I think it was just. They got a couple empty netters laid, maybe in 5-2.
Okay. Well, they haven't lost since then. They tied their franchise record for longest home winning streak in a playoff that they set, last season in 2021 when they also won 6 straight home games. Fun little stat here, as you and I have been pretty strong on the Shesterkin train all season long. Igor Shesterkin just became the goalie to take the fewest amount of games to reach 600 saves in a single postseason. Now, a couple of those marathon overtimes against the Pittsburgh Penguins certainly helped, but 18 games and he's made over 600 saves. There's a six-way tie for goalies who took 19 games to get to that note. Some decent names: Ken Dryden, Jean-Sébastien Giguère, Tuukka Rask, Olaf Kolzig, John Van Beesbrook, and Kirk McLean on that list. So, and then the only two who hit it in 20 games were Tim Thomas and Patrick Waugh. So he is up there with some absolute greats, and he's kicking out rubber. You can't blame the goaltending in this one, but at the same time, you're just looking at a series where the worst thing that they can, I guess the only silver lining for the Rangers is they're going back home where they've had a ton of success this postseason. MSG is going to be electric, but
they showed the home road splits of Igor Shesterkin, and he's like a 340 goaltender on the road, but like a sub-2 goaltender with like a 940 save percentage or 950 save percentage at home, 8-1 record. So yeah, they like being at home. He likes being at home in particular. So you're right. That is the kind of silver lining, saving grace that the Rangers have, is that they're going back to Madison Square Garden and have a chance to kind of take the momentum back with a victory at home, which they've done a lot here in the playoffs and all season long.
Oh man, it is going to be fantastic theater, especially since the Western Conference Finals ended so quickly. So it's great that we're going to have some solid play here in the Eastern Conference Final. That game, I believe, yes, June 9th, we will get Game 5 at 8 p.m. Eastern. All right, before we get to our power rankings, what are the most attractive head coaching vacancies across the National Hockey League right now? We want to give some stick taps, a couple stick taps. One for Carey Price, the Bill Masterton Award winner, rightfully so, battling back from hip surgery, right? Yes, hip surgery, and then a stint in the NHLPA's player assist program. So great to see Carey Price was back for 5 games. The NHL's better with Carey Price in it, so we hope that he does make a full recovery, because we know he ended up playing just a little bit at the end of the year, and then it just wasn't feeling right coming off that surgery. So hopefully he's able to come back and play next year. Because the NHL is better with him in it. So Absolutely. There's that. And then the King Clancy Award, which goes to humanitarian, just being an all-around good dude off the ice. PK Subban, the winner of that. So some stick taps to PK Subban with the New Jersey Devils. All right. All that to say, we've got coaching vacancies in the East and in the West. And right after this, Mike and I will power rank which jobs would be the most attractive. You are listening to the Locked On NHL podcast with Ross Levitan. You can find my work on Locked On Senators. You can find that on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. The same goes for Locked On Leafs, which is hosted by Mike DiStefano, who you can also find weekdays on Leafs Lunch on TSN 1050 radio. But the Leafs, they've got Sheldon Keefe, and the Senators have DJ Smith, but there are teams who are still looking for a head coach, and some of them are perennial playoff teams, like the Las Vegas Golden Knights, like the New York Islanders, like the Boston Bruins as of yesterday. Even the Philadelphia Flyers, not as in recent years, but this is a team with a long history of success. So, which jobs, if you were a head coach right now, would you have as number one on your priority list? We want you to leave a comment as well. Let us know your number one and your number 2. We're doing 7, right?
6. No? 2, 6 or 7.
Winnipeg, Detroit, New York, Vegas, Boston, Philly. Way to go, me. I read New York as 2 words. So there you go. So out of the 6, let us know who you'd have as your number 1 and your number 6 choice on that. So do we want to work our way up or down?
Let's start from the top.
Okay. All right.
Start from the top, I think. Just because it's easiest to do that and weed out so that we don't give things away.
For sure.
Sometimes it's nice to go bottom up, but for this specific list, I think top down.
Start on top.
All right. Who do you? Why don't you go ahead and start with your?
Yeah, well, number one, and this one's kind of tough for me, Mikey, because I don't love the way that they've treated players. I don't love the way that they've treated coaches per se. But at the same time, you're looking at the best team on paper. You're also looking at probably the best city to live in. You're also looking at the place that doesn't have a state income tax. So, number one for me, Mikey, is the Vegas Golden Knights. I just think that's a job that any NHL head coach would love to have. I also think that it's going to be super important for them to be able to get the right guy that can last a little bit longer, and we'll see where it goes from there. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, Mikey's computer just shut down, but it's all good. I'll carry it here for a little bit as we got in. Vegas number one for me, and this is where it gets interesting because I think you're going to make an argument for 4 out of the 5 remaining spots as a place to come back and be like, okay, yeah, I could see that. You know, you're looking at a team like Detroit. You got the Yzer plan going. So how close are they to some success, though? And would it be a situation where you go in with Steve Yzerman, or, for example, I guess Philly would be pretty similar as they're looking at a rebuilding situation. Would you go in with the not even assumption, where you have a conversation with the GM where you're going to be the guy through it all? So Mikey's back with me now. I was just saying that for these rebuilding teams, my number one, by the way, was Vegas, just because you're looking at no state tax. You're also looking at a brand new franchise, brand new facility, and the most talented roster with Jack Eichel, Mark Stone, Alex Pietrangelo, and more. This is a loaded team. Shea Theodore should get a little bit of a nod in that mix as well. So I had Vegas first, and then I just started rambling about the rebuilding teams, Mikey. Would you go in to that meeting, though, with a team and be like, all right, you're gonna stick with me through this, right? Like, it's not like you're giving me a try, and if I can't get this bunch of ragtag guys into the playoffs next year, then we're gonna go our separate ways, right? You need some sort of incentive that you are going to be the long-term solution if you decide to go to Philly or Detroit.
Yeah, you don't want to be a stopgap type of coach,
Right.
obviously. But if you're coming up through the minors, or you're a junior coach, you're an AHL coach, and you're a first-time rookie head coach,
Right.
you're probably not going to have those type of high demands. You'll just be excited to get your feet wet, and
Yep.
hopefully, in a way that Jared Bednar took over a completely dog crap team,
Mm-hmm.
you could parlay it into success. You know
For
what I
sure.
mean? So I agree with you it to a certain extent, depending on who the coach is.
Okay. Well, let's do this as though we're Bruce Cassidy, the guy who was in the news today, and if you're picking where you'd want to go. So I had Vegas as my number one. Is that similar to yours, or do you have someone else?
Yeah, I have Vegas as my number one team as well. And funny enough, my coach that I have kind of pegged for them is Bruce Cassidy.
Yeah, I think so too.
So yeah, it just makes a lot of sense, right? You look at a team, they're veteran. They are a team that's willing to spend, a team that's willing to do whatever it takes to win, it seems. So I think that Bruce Cassidy makes a whole lot of sense for the Vegas Golden Knights. And it's the most attractive option because who the hell doesn't want to live in Vegas, man? Would love to live in Las Vegas.
Yeah, no doubt. But at the same time, I guess the backhanded of that is they've gone through. This is now their third head coach, and they've been a team for 4 years.
At some point, you got to think that they aren't so quick to the trigger, because especially after seeing the success that Gallant is having right now in his next gig in New York, you got to think like, maybe we were too quick there. Maybe the next guy will give him an extra year or two of the leash. It's not like we're gonna make the Western Final or the Stanley Cup Final every year, guys. Like,
Yeah,
that does not happen unless you're Tampa Bay, apparently, right? So
for
I don't
sure.
know, and even you just like Vegas did make the conference final last year
Yep.
and still fired their head
Wow.
coach and Pete DeBoer. So I don't
But
know, man.
still, you still take the job. You still take
Absolutely.
it as the best job. Who do you have for number two?
I got the Detroit Red Wings actually as my number 2 squad that I'd be interested in. I saw what Steve Yzerman built in Tampa Bay, what they're doing right now. I think like the Yzer plan of that guy, I would believe in it. And I think they got some young pieces like
They're
Mosai.
still a ways away, though.
They are, but I think that there would be like John Cooper. When he hired John Cooper, there were ways like they had some time to grow before their glow up, I guess.
We were talking
They
about
did make
Andre
a run.
Palat. I see
Yeah.
Andre Palat as the guy maybe they go chasing after. Connection with
could-
Stevie Y, 7th
Yeah,
round pick under him. He'd
that
be
could
a big boost for that forward core because they've got their top line all set. Now, there's rumors Tyler Bertuzzi might be on his way out in a trade situation, but like Larkin and Lucas Raymond are 2/3 of an unbelievable top line, but they just have no depth for me. So it's going to be a 2-3 year process. But again, if you get that insurance from Steve Yzerman, like John Cooper did, what a relationship they had when they came in, I think that you could see a situation where that's super appealing and getting to work with Mo Sider every day. And there's some unbelievable pieces for sure in Detroit. I've got someone else, though, at number 2.
I got Winnipeg coming in as my third best option. I think like you said, you've got the goalie in Connor Hellebuck. You've got a stud centerman in Pierre-Luc Dubois, if you can get him on a contract, obviously, depending on what happens with Mark Scheifele. But you've got Kyle Connor, who I think is a 50 goal scorer in the NHL at some point. You've got some decent pieces. Nick Ehlers is another solid player. I just like Winnipeg as a team, and that's somebody where I'm looking at Barry Trotz, who's a Winnipeg guy.
Yep.
You bring in a veteran coach who's ready to win now, who could get that team, who has struggled a bit defensively of late. You get them to buy in defensively. They already have the Kyle Connors, the Nick Ehlers, the Mark Scheifele's, the Dubois. They have offensive talents. I think that Trotz would fit like a glove in Winnipeg, and you're living out there right now, so you would have a lot more to say about it. But to me, I think that's the third best option out there.
Now, what's interesting about Winnipeg, and they do have some young pieces coming. The Manitoba Moose decor was unbelievable with Ville Heinola, Jonathan Kovacevic as well, and Dylan Sandberg, the back-to-back NCAA champion with Minnesota Duluth, who's a huge part of those teams. But right now, the problem with Winnipeg is you've got a decor that's aging, and that's all, like 5 of their 6 guys are making over $3 million. Like they don't have like a top pair that's making that like 6 or 7, but everyone is in 4.5, like Brendan Dillon, Dylan DeMello, Nate Schmidt, they brought in on a big contract as well. I just think that needs to be reworked, whether it's on the ice or even just like the hierarchy in the locker room. There's just kind of this weird, like, it's such a veteran group on the back end that it's hard for these kids to break in is what I'm kind of getting the sense of as an outsider as well. And of course, Josh Morrissey, like he's your dude back there. Like he just eats
Neil
minutes.
Pionk.
Neil Pionk. So like, yeah, you got one lefty, one righty, but like honestly, to me, and Dylan DeMello, great like second or third pair right shot defenseman. But yeah, they've got 5 defensemen making $3 or more million and 4 making 3.9, but yet their struggles were all based on getting out of their own end. So like Brendan Dillon to me,
structure like Barry Trotz. That'll help with that.
Yeah, maybe. But I mean, like, yeah, Ville Heinola though is going to be 22 years old. Like Sandberg's 23. Like he's going into the last year of his entry level contract for Dylan Sandberg, and he's played 15 NHL games and he looked great in all 15 of them. Like he was one of their better defensemen. So I'm just curious how the new head coach is going to utilize the decor. And like Connor Hellebuck's one of those goalies where he'll play 81 out of 82 games if you let him. But you could tell down the stretch he was tired. And now Eric Comrie has established himself as a legitimate option as an NHL goalie, no longer bouncing around as he was on waivers and getting traded every 5 minutes. It felt like he was New Jersey, Arizona, 2 stops in Winnipeg, and now he's back. Like he was unreal this year when getting the chance. But if I'm the head coach, I'm going to Connor Hellebuck. I'm saying, dude, we're going to need you to play every game come playoffs. But like, can you please take a breather? Like play 55, 60 if that games. Like I want to find out the exact number. Then we'll move on because I know we've been going on Winnipeg a little bit here, but I want to see. Yeah, Eric Comrie got 16 starts this year. Like that number should be at least 20, probably 25.
He's also pending UFA, so who knows?
Oh, they'll bring him back. They'll bring him back, I think. So
no, let's hope.
Yeah, lots to like in Winnipeg. They would be my next choice as well on this list. And then I'm going I'm going with Detroit after that. I know you were already high on Detroit, but I'll just say that that's where I'd have them just under where Winnipeg is. And then, I mean, now we're starting to get, I think there's a pretty big separation between Winnipeg and Vegas and everybody else. Like the Dallases, like
You don't like Boston? You don't like the Boston job?
no, Boston's probably second last, right after Philly. The Philly job's brutal.
Yeah, I would. So I'll go through my 6. You can go through your 6.
Sure.
Then we can kind of just go over them. So I got Vegas, Detroit, Winnipeg, then Boston 4th, Dallas 5th, and Dallas 4th, Boston 5th, and then Philly 6th. So we're pretty similar. I think you're just a little lower on Detroit.
I just flipped Winnipeg and Detroit.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, we're gonna find out soon, man, because there's no chance any team is not gonna have a coach by the time the NHL draft rolls around.
No, I mean, if we're playing a little matchmaker, I've heard Torts' name get thrown around in Philly. That would be interesting. John Tortorella with the Broad Street Bullies. I mean, I guess Jay Lee.
They're gonna bring back Tom Cicito, their first move.
Oh God. No. Dallas. I don't know. They could go in a couple of different directions with Dallas. There's also David Quinn is another coach who's out there who potentially could be had. Julian potentially would make some sense in Dallas, or potentially they go completely off the board and go with a young guy and try and kind of do something else with that squad. I mean, Miro Heiskanen is kind of the guy there now in terms of being the number one. It sounds like Klingberg's going to hit free agency, so who knows what that team is also going to look like. And I just don't know what the hell the Boston Bruins are going to be. I really don't know.
No, and I mean, this one hasn't been confirmed at all. It's just all speculation. But if they are serious about going to a rebuild, and if Bergeron is calling it quits, then you have to think that's a possibility. All of a sudden, all eyes go to Marchand and Pasternak because those are the two guys that are going to bring back the most. And right now, this is a team that went all in. They don't even have their first round pick this year. Anaheim has it in the Hampus Lindholm trade. So
yeah. Well, the problem too with trading Marchand, he's out for 6 to 8 months.
Yeah. I mean, Pasta, you'd get. He's 1 year from free agency though, so that does maybe you make it. Whereas after July 13th this year, when free agency opens, you can start negotiating. Maybe it's a situation like Mark Stone in Ottawa where he can negotiate the contract. And then the extension comes with the trade so that you don't lose out as much value. Now, with Mark Stone, he was only going to sign an extension with Vegas, so it didn't really help on the value coming back. But you got to think if Pasternak is open.
So well for Ottawa.
No, it didn't. But, that's a story for another day. The franchise. Jesus. But, yeah, with Pasternak, he's 25 years old.
No, I know.
Even Stone was 28. Like, he would get an absolute haul.
You would. You just signed Lindholm, though, to an 8-year deal.
I know. So, yeah, they're in a bit of a pickle. Hey, Don Sweeney. Thanks.
But they may not. They may decide to try one more kick at the can and bring in another veteran coach. And maybe it is just a simple change of voice. And hopefully they have one more kick at the can. Bergeron comes back. Marchand gets healthy. Maybe Krejci returns. There's that speculation was running rampant last week at the World Championship.
Yeah, because they won bronze, right? And Pasternak and Krejci are getting into the Czech beer, the Pilsners.
Exactly. So, I mean, I'm really at a loss over I don't know what to think about the Boston situation. I just don't, because they're legitimately going to go one of two ways, either rebuild or one more kick at the can. I don't think it's an in-between.
No.
But I don't know which way they're leaning.
You just don't want to get stuck in that mushy middle, though. But if you're the New York Islanders, the Ottawa Senators, who expect internally, say what you want from the outside, to take another step towards a playoff spot, they have to be licking their chops. Even Detroit, and I'm trying to think like Columbus, all the teams on the outside looking in. Yeah, Buffalo had a great finish to their year. Owen Power coming in next season. Like, you have to just be licking your chops right now, as the Boston Bruins will be without Charlie McAvoy and Brad Marchand for at least the first months of the season. Months. It's not like they're going to miss 2 or 3 games. They're going to miss like 15 or 20.
Yep.
So, It's going to be something to keep track of. You know what else we're going to keep track of is the Eastern Conference Final. And by next Tuesday, when Mikey and I speak, I believe we will have the Stanley Cup Final. Which team has a better chance to beat the Colorado Avalanche?
Tampa.
Yeah.
Tampa.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? They're going on 10 straight series wins. And they look so good tonight. Like, it's different guys stepping up. Like, Nick Paul was their best player for a stretch. Didn't notice him once tonight. But other guys stepped up.
Looked like Cale Makar.
That little toe drag was unbelievable.
But, like, he was pinching in the entire game. It's like he just got that one little bit of confidence. And then he's like, oh, good things happen when, I activate like this. Yeah, it can happen. And look what you did, Zach. It led to the opening goal of the game, gave you your team the lead, and you were able to kind of coast from there on out through the rest of the game. Just worked out perfectly.
Yeah, absolutely love to see it. The show worked out perfectly as Mikey went out and back in and became Ross Levitan. I just changed your name back on YouTube. So we're having some fun here. A little wild and wacky Tuesday night on Locked On NHL.
This show was a 3 out of 10. 3 out of 10.
4.
Okay, we'll give it a 4.
All right, we'll be back next week.
Hit us up in the comments. How wild was today's show? We were all, I don't know what the hell. This is why we never record at midnight.
I know.
First time we ever record at midnight, and this is why. This is what happens.
I hope you enjoyed it. Find some humor through the darkness. We will be back knowing our Stanley Cup finalists next Tuesday right here on the Eastern Conference edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. In the meantime, go check out Locked On Leafs. Go check out Locked On Senators and all the other great shows on the Locked On Podcast Network. We've got your team every day.